We are going to talk about the politics of exhibition making. My name is Vanessa Müller. I'm the head of dramaturgy here at Kunsthalle, Wien, and I'm very happy to have all these people here with me on stage. This panel is with representatives of Kevin Space, Morph, New York, School, and Sword. But if you count correctly, Morph is the absent/present participant. They wanted to be part of this program, but unfortunately they could not make it. But they asked us to both read a statement that they wrote in preparation of this talk, and they also sent a set of questions. And these questions, in a way, give you an idea of the curatorial framework of that exhibition space/project space in the 3rd district. So we start with the absent present Morph, who I try to represent. Is it here? Oops. Yes. Okay. Morph, that is Tiziana Seidel and Lukas Thaler. And their statement goes as following. Mauve is a non-commercial artist-run space based in Vienna's 3rd district, founded in 2012. Always closely collaborating with the artists involved in the shows, we strive to explore the exhibition as an artistic medium. We see Morph as a space with an authorial program that closely relates to our personal and artistic interests. We create our program in relationship to our own artistic practices. This allows us to make exhibitions that have a strong conceptual focus, at the same time giving us the freedom to explore these concepts during the production of a show and developing them even further in the discussions with our audience. While we do not represent artists, we have a strong interest in long-term relationship with the artists involved in Morph's program that goes beyond commercial or branding interests. The exhibitions Morph curates take place both in its space in Vienna as well as in other locations internationally. Exhibitions curated by Morph have been hosted by Drop City in Newcastle and Düsseldorf, Club Pro in Los Angeles, and will be hosted by Galerie Céline in Glasgow and Lot 36 Porto in the coming year, 2018. And here are some images from previous shows. Now we continue with a presentation of School, represented by Andrea Lumpelegger to my left.
Thank you, Vanessa. I founded School together with Yasmina Haddad in 2007, and we call it a place, but also a collective, maybe an institution, a set of its facilities, and attitudes, and more. Our main series is called Performative Screenings, and we will have the 50th edition of Performative Screenings coming up in November with Marwa Asanios from Beirut. And we had Performative Screenings number 48 with Tabitha Rezaïr in July. And you see her White Institutions Guide here on screen. Tabitha is a French video artist of Guyanese and Danish descent. She lives in South Africa. She is also, I have to read that, a health tech politics practitioner, doula, and Kundalini yoga teacher. And her practices unearth the possibilities of decolonial healing through the politics of technology. Her work tackles coloniality and its effects on identity, technology, sexuality, health, and spirituality. So I wanted to mention her a little closer because the way she works is really important for us. So we started maybe some years ago already to invite artists, or we became interested in artists outside the Western context, many times from the Arab part of the world, because we really feel it's important in these times to look closer at issues through works of artists like, I don't know, queerness from a Muslim perspective, or issues of migration, of course, aftermath of war, but also just being a non-white artist in Vienna. So Tabitha, of course, her critique was about us as much as everything, because she approached the white space, of course. We see ourselves in a tradition of critical art making or exhibition making, of course, but sometimes we are aware it's not even important to be within the limits of art. So I think what first matters to us is a content that we want to show, something that maybe we wouldn't see in Vienna otherwise. So that's also why we try to have people from outside a lot, as much as possible actually. And it has to be, first of all, relevant in the present. If it's art or not, doesn't matter. It could also be like poetry reading via Skype from Mexico City and Beirut, or it could be a discussion on elections, or it could be a block party or a doom metal concert in our basement. So, yeah, I think about curatorial practices we talk later, and I'll leave it like that for now.
Then I think we continue with Franziska Wildförster, who's here to represent Kevin Space, and while you start, I look for your website.
Excuse me?
While you start to talk about your space, I look for your website.
All right. Hi, Kevin Space is a collective of 4 people. Fanny Hauser, Caro Neubauer, Denise Sumi, and myself. We founded this space in February 2016. You can read it here, actually. It's a small Kunstverein. We're trying to promote different formats. I think that's basically exactly what's standing there, actually. Group exhibitions, solo exhibitions, residencies, a lot of ephemeral programs such as talks and performances, screenings, and the thing what we're trying to do is very like an intimate space, in a sense that we have residencies and we work really closely with the artists that we invite, but I think that's something that actually most of the spaces represented here do. But similarly, in terms of programming, I think I can very much relate. We can very much relate. There is our agenda is very much based also on critical discourse, on queer thought, queer discourse, queer representation, on the post-colonial or neo-colonial, or subjectivity in technological globalization. So I think we're also trying to create some sort of discourse there. I think what makes us a little special in comparison to others, we're the only not artist-run space. We all come from institutional backgrounds, curatorial or production, and also, I think, also trying to inhabit that space between the project space and the Kunstverein or the Kunsthalle, like structurally and economically, and also in terms of content. Yeah.
Miles Durr from SORT.
Hi, I'm Miles, and SORT started in October of 2016, and now I run it with Katharina Höglinger, who's an Austrian painter. and started by accident. I had planned the first exhibition titled Merlin as a group show to try to understand the practice of curating better, because being an artist, I deal with curators all the time, and I had some skepticism but also some questions, and I wanted to try my hand at it. And before coming back to Vienna in 2016, 10 days before I got here, my roommates told me they found an apartment in the first district, and I decided to do the first show there, and that it was a great idea to continue doing it. And my personal interests lie in sculpture and painting, and that's the place where I feel like I have the ability to do curation, or bring like a critical eye to what's going on. So although there has been, for example, some performance in the space or some work like a video still, etc., the main focus of the space is on sculpture and painting, and also a dialogue, having local artists, and it's really important for us to bring international artists. And then as far as being a space, another important thing for us is having open hours. So we're open every Sunday from 12 to 3. Sometimes that changes, sometimes it's 3 to 6, but if you check our website or Facebook, you'll figure it out. And that it's a coherent program, because I think that you can have interesting pop-up exhibitions or open studios or just show your friends' work, but I think curating can be a very loose practice, but to take it more seriously, I feel like myself and the artists and then the local artistic community and people who are watching Vienna as well get more out of it by having a consistent program that you can maybe see a line running through the shows from the beginning until now, and hopefully it will continue to keep going. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then there's New York, represented by Stefan Reiterer and Axel Koschir.
Yeah, so it's an exhibition space that's located in the 20th district. The space in itself is somehow part of a larger shared studio where 11 artists are working. So it's part of this bigger space. It's separate to work as an exhibition space, not to interfere with the studio work. It's specific in that sense, maybe because obviously a shared studio brings certain resources, that also this art association that we finally founded to find a vehicle for something like organizing an exhibition space, they can be shared or that can be used as well. And it was established in 2013. We're doing mostly solo shows, because we find that an important maybe possibility for an artist that we would invite to really get a show going that he or she really wants to do in a way. And also, as the other people said on the other panels, you're supportive about that. You try to rethink what the artwork might be, what the show might be, or how it could be thought, or what the concept could be, and to work in a dialogue with the people setting up stuff to get as close as possible to what they would think about. I don't know.
Maybe to add to that is that we also just recently started a residency program in the 20th district with a flat, so people that we would invite internationally, they can come to Vienna and live there and also work there, and also like use our studio space as a studio, and that's also funded from the government. So it's also like very, very good for us to keep this up, so we can also provide something like an artist fee and this like money wise that it's not always like the artist like pays for the travels, pays for the transports and everything. So everything should be in a way covered.
Yeah, that's actually an important thing in a way as a concept, that we can pay an artist fee, and it's very important because it's nothing more annoying that you have to do all the work and then in the end you pay it out of your own pocket. You know, it's a bit shitty, maybe.
I think all of you already mentioned some things which are, according to me, very much related with an artist space as a kind of institution. Therefore, the first question, which is actually a question that was phrased by Morph, what does the term institution mean to you? Would you define your space / project as one? If not, what are the differences between what you do and an institution? Is it a question of money, of audience, or is the term something that some people claim for what they do and others simply don't? It's a very complex question.
Say something. I think the terms like project space and so on have come up a lot in like describing the operations that we all do, and I think it's really tricky to use that word because it also really undermines like all the effort and like also kind of organization that we're all doing. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of thinking and some agendas and so on, and I think the institution always has a really bad image, but I think the institution is also just a set of rules, you know, that you're kind of that are the basis of your practice. So I think in a way we're all institutionalizing somehow. I think what's the difference between what we do and Kunsthalle is, of course, the money, which has been a big topic today. And also the audiences. I think the institutions have the capacity to bring in a lot different audiences, and the project space, the artist-run space, often very much circulates in its own circle. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. We could and should use the word institution, but maybe we would use it in an ironic way sometimes. And of course, we are artists. Our space is artist-run, so I think we have the chance to be more subjective. Maybe I mean we have a program when applying for money and everything. We have a concept and everything, but still we don't have to deal with maybe what biggest institutions have to deal with. And we totally like it's totally open, of course, that we have more freedom maybe. With less money.
I think, yeah, that's something to add. Like the institution has a lot of ties to, you know, people like give the institution the money. There's a lot of visitor numbers that are very important, and maybe also a little bit the conflict with the mainstreaming, of course. You know, like the things have to be appealing to like a broader public. So, yeah.
I think. Institutions often refers to time and scale, and I think some of the places here may turn into institutions. I don't think that the room in my apartment will turn into an institution, but you know, I think there's definitely a negative connotation with that word in some ways, but I actually see a positive connotation. If someone said SORT as an institution, I would take that as a compliment. So institution building, I guess, like I think if all of us like clearly have programs, if we kept going with that, maybe one day it would turn into something. But I think, for me at least, it's too soon to tell what will happen.
I think we are more like a Kunstverein than anything else. I think that's more or less the.
It's the pragmatic form is a Kunstverein, but then in the end, I don't know about the other spaces that talk, or people that organize that, how they run it, but I have to admit that we don't have so many members really. So it's maybe a way to keep the organization straight, or to be able to act in a certain way, like the people that run that really or curate that want to act. So if an institution is just like another form, it's a pragmatic thing, and yeah, I don't know how institutions are organized, or if that's a criteria, but I would think it's about scale, maybe. But also, it's an interpretation of that word that sounds like a very big building or something like that with nice shows, or I don't know, that it would create a place or like a point where you would go back to, or that has a certain image. And I guess maybe that factor about an institution, even if the programming is not totally coherent, it could have a certain vibe or a certain self-understanding that could create a quality like that that actually is important for artists to do shows there in terms of exposure or making sense, yeah.
As somebody who works for an institution, of course, I have a more positive idea of this term, but what I find most interesting about the idea of even small spaces defining themselves as institutions is that you think beyond the pure exhibition making, that you, and you already mentioned that, yet that you think about the audience, that you think about other projects, that you come up with the idea of an artist residency to have like a long-term relationship with artists. So I think this is something that distinguishes a purely like artist-run space from an institution, and I think like almost everybody on this stage in a way is thinking about exhibition also in terms of institutions.
I would totally agree. Like we have heard from artists we worked with that it's like so nice to work on this very personal level. I mean, like people we invite or artists, like it sometimes takes us a year or 2 years to like really like a lot of talking to really find out what we could do, and then it's very different. We haven't seen our website, but it just looks very different. It's called school. Like, it sounds like an institution, but it's very different working with us, of course. And like these alliances we make with artists, I think that's a main point. Yeah.
Are you all more interested in individual artworks or in artistic practice?
Definitely the practice, because this is, of course, about the politics of exhibition making. So I think what the politics are mostly in our case is inviting an artist or a duo of artists to inhabit the space and create something very site-specific. To give them the resources, our time, also monetary resources, to actually think of something that they maybe haven't done before, or that special location can offer them. So it's really about this collaboration and about exchanging. We have done group exhibitions, but I think that is something that we're not too interested in, actually. I mean, we had 2 group exhibitions of particular artworks and so on, but I think also, like, in the time that we have been doing Cabin Space, we have also, or for me personally, rethought the idea of the curating, and we talked about authorship earlier, so more as a non-hierarchical discourse. And that's something we're trying to do.
I can't say that I think it depends on the exhibition. Some exhibitions, I've seen a piece and I think that fits with an exhibition that I really want to do, and other exhibitions, I think this artist or group of artists is great. I want to give them the opportunity, or a couple of our exhibitions have been putting 2 artists together, like something, our current exhibition is 2 artists that I thought their work would be great in a dialogue with each other. So it really depends. I don't have necessarily a preference for the individual artwork or the artistic practice. It depends for me.
I don't know about you, but I'm personally in a way interested in the people that make artworks. So maybe one way of how we are curating this space, if you can call it that, you think like it's strange, like you had very good talks with this person, but you don't really know what the artworks look like or how this person would approach something like a show. So it's an enormous benefit to be able to run a space to really like work with other artists and somehow get in their thinking and get something back out of that, or maybe just have a dialogue in the train of setting up something that could actually also evolve the way people think about what they're doing.
And and it's also maybe important for us that that it's also like the people that we work with or who we work with is that that in a way that they don't have like a huge like setup or anything. So there is usually like a maybe they have like a I don't know, like some kind of repetition already in the city or somewhere, but there is no really like a platform. And I think that's also something that we are trying to do to like really like have the space, as that was already mentioned before, but take the space and create a show with us, and we are following you in a way, like more or less.
Yeah, it's a sorry. It's a personal thing in a way, and then some people maybe have more exposure nationally or internationally, but some maybe don't, and it doesn't really say anything, you know. And it's not a selection that we would do, or like a curation that we would do to pick like the hottest people to somehow get an institution in the fastest way and get a lot of money or something like that. Yeah. I think it's in a way to give good exposure to people that might successfully do something with that.
Yeah, to us it's definitely the process also, already the process of working together with the artists. Like we provide a setting, our space, we have intervened into our space, like we have that purple floor and we have drilled a hole into the basement ourselves, and we offer that as a setting to work with. And I think most artists have to work in a very different way than what they are used to usually, and we hear it often like they are able to make different works. But I think it's also like the process will be visible to the audience as well, and that's very important for us too. Like a lot of times there's not even an object left, it's a performance or there's sound or it's live action going on. So I think that's for us, that's the medium where we feel like a lot of things are happening emotionally. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, there's like two people that we do this project with, Stefan Reiter is here, Bernhard Rasinger and Saskia Niklin. And Bernhard is running, for example, because he said performances, he's programming a kind of modular synthesizer music happening that's also happening frequently, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year. That's also like part of the exhibition policy of this space.
Talking about audience, how important is the aspect of mediation for you and for what you do? Do you address people you know? Is it like a circle of friends? Have you regular visitors? Do you try to build up a larger audience, or do you think that it's enough?
You mean enough to...
I mean, again, like talking from the perspective of an institution, I mean, a lot of what we do is about like audience enlargement. We have to reach out to address like other people who are not familiar with our program yet. Is that something that plays an important role for you, or is it more that you think like, okay, that's more the task just of like real institutions, so just let it happen, and what we do will find its audience?
No, of course it's of major importance, and we always try to have people outside the art world coming as well. So it should be like interesting for a lot of different people. And of course we started with a lot of friends coming in the beginning. And I mean, we do that for 7 years now. So we are happy we can say that we have a core audience. Like we got to know a lot of people we didn't know before, and people tell each other. And I mean, still we know that we are not known to so many people. And I don't know, we try in all different media, and of course we have to do something about it, yeah. I mean, you can't just hope that somebody is coming over.
I think it's definitely a goal of ours to reach as many different audiences as possible, but it's also really easily said. I think our advantage is that the 4 of us all come from a little different backgrounds and groups. So there's a lot of people that I had not known before, like for example, Caro, worked at the Tanzquartier here and works for the Wiener Festwochen. So there's also that entire crowd and like the friends of friends then and so on. So I think we were lucky that from the beginning we had a lot of audience also that way. And then the other thing is that we are located at Volkertmarkt, which some of you might know as kind of conflicted or like a little problematic area still. Also in Vienna, it has a huge history of migration, also drug problems and so on. And of course, there is always this idea of us coming in there and gentrifying and, you know, this like hip art space, just placing itself there. And of course, we are very aware of that and we're reflecting that and we're trying to articulate that also in our program. And to also, you know, we have a collaboration with the Kretzelblatt, which is like, you know, the small newspaper that is just for Volkertmarkt. We're trying to, you know, communicate with our neighbors and work with our neighbors as much as possible and try to get people to come in, which sometimes works, sometimes not. But we don't want to, like, you know, do social romanticism with this institution, saying we're breaking, you know, the boundaries, but we're trying to. In small steps, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of friends and friends of friends, and for us, like the exhibitions, not only bring in outside voices, but also like reflecting that back out for us, like documentation and reaching an audience outside of Vienna. I think that's important for any institution or space, like in 2017, is that. I mean, many more people see the documentation of our shows than could ever possibly see the shows. So we document it for contemporary uses. It's not like for an archive, per se. Yeah, I mean, I love having people come in. There's like two kind of people that are like, you might say, know nothing about art or not exposed to contemporary art so much, and one finds it really exciting and refreshing, the other one says, where's the art? And I like both of those experiences, so I hope I keep having them.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty similar. I mean, of course, everybody's welcome to drop by. Some people just won't or don't feel like it, or get a satisfying or not so satisfying experience. In terms of documentation, I wanted to say that too. We are actually trying to publish like a small catalog about the shows we do, so that there would be something that you might find in a library or something about 2017 and what was going on there somehow. And we try to do that in two modes. Like one is a production that we would somehow supervise and do, and it has like a certain design, so to speak, if the artist is not interested in doing something like that or is not heavily involved in bookmaking. And on the other hand, it's also possible to somehow work together on a kind of artist book. So both things are happening in terms of documentation. And yeah, you never know. I mean, our space, as I said, is in the 20th district, so there was a concert from Franz Zahr once, and a DJ then, and he was like playing certain kind of music, and then some guys from the street came in and started breakdancing. And he just shifted his playlist, and it was really a nice evening. But the people don't necessarily want to come back if there's no music. I don't know.
Do you feel a pressure to professionalize? If I look at the image of alternative spaces, off spaces, artist-run spaces, they all have really like well-made websites. They all have like full documentation of the exhibitions on all these. You mentioned online platforms, Contemporary Art Daily, etc. You find more and more documentation of exhibitions that took place in non-commercial and non-institutional spaces. So how do you deal with that? That you are in a way already a very important part within the institutional art landscape on an international level, even.
Naja, in terms of, for example, documentation and professionalism in that sense, it's not said that because it's a professional institution with real money, real exhibition space and real catalogs and a real photographer, that it's necessarily better quality. So there's just like within the art community maybe other ways to get really good results. So if professionalizing is just making it less personal, then I'm not interested in that.
I mean, I'm wearing my curator outfit today, yeah, I think I would say, yeah, my attitude is professional, but I don't know, I can't imagine doing it any other way. Like, I care very much about what I'm doing, so I try to do as best I can. If that defines professional, then yes. And I think what you said is really interesting. Sometimes, like, a free photographer could be better than a photographer you pay for, although we try to pay every photographer.
Yeah, maybe it's not only free, but maybe you share some
it's
stuff.
It's like just like a commercial gallery or an institution isn't always going to have a better show or a better documentation or a better website, which I think is like all the other things, like the blurring of lines that people have been talking about. And I think one of the things is like the smallness and the adaptability and even the challenges of a space can be something really new. Like none of the spaces, I've been to all of them, I think, that are standing up here, like, are perfect white cubes. And that's something that, a perfect white cube can't have that challenge, like there's a little bit of something interesting in trying to bring a professional attitude to non-professional spaces.
I think it's a little tricky that there's a professionalization, kind of how one appears to the outside, what it is not just the local audience, but it's also, of course, as you said, the blogs and like international. So there's actually a more sort of competitive sense, I guess, also through being like everyone is visible out there now, and there is a certain drive to, look good. But also on the other hand, it's kind of perverse because we're talking about professionalization, about, like all the labor that is coming in and not even being able to pay the artists and so on and oneself. So that's also really like tricky term, I guess. Yeah.
I think I would agree to professionalism in two ways. First, like what you said with being visible, or I agree with you. Being visible to the outside is like we want to have a big audience, not big in a sense that we need to have a few hundred people here all the time, but I want everybody who would be interested in a certain topic to know about it and be able to come. So that's why visibility is important. And then I think we want to be professional for ourselves, like we self-taught with what we call curating. And I think we gained a lot of experience within these 7 years with what we did and how we learned to better do it. Like, is it talking to artists, deal with artists, interacting, like working together. And we try to be more and more precise with what we pick and our aesthetics and how it would, how the audience would be involved. And like I feel, yeah, that's becoming more professional, I guess.
And maybe something to add is also that as we are artists ourselves, we want to like provide the best experience also for somebody to work there. Like, so the professionalism is just like your own idea of when you travel somewhere, or if it's in Vienna, like you work with people or with the setup that is like in a way like good, and it's not just like, can you please paint that wall, and like it should be, in a way, I don't know, reasonable. Yeah.
I think also in that term, in that sense of the term, we are considering ourselves with the institutional as well. We have our structures. We have sort of the things that person does better and that person does better. So we're professionalizing in that sense. So it's becoming also more effective. But also, as you said, like most like comfortable and desirable for the artists and for the outcome. So, yeah. Definitely.
I also wanted to add that, like the term, if it's pragmatically understood, it's about your profession, I guess. And your profession, maybe you like it or not, it's the thing you do that pays the rent and the food. So the question is, in a structure like ours, we get money from the state and distribute it in a way that we see fit. Is it even possible to be professional? How much money do they have to give us in order to like live our lives? And do we really want to, invest so much in this, in a way, bureaucracy thing that you maybe lose in the experience then, or, you can't be everywhere?
Last question. Looking at the landscape of art production in Vienna and beyond, its institutions, and there are many in Vienna, how would you describe or position yourself within that landscape as like an alternative, as a supplement, as an addition?
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand the question.
Where would you locate your project spaces within the landscape of institutions? Like, do they provide alternative models? Do you think that there are supplements to the existing exhibitions, art scene? Do they want to speak clearly with a different voice? Do they do similar things on a smaller level? That's the politics question.
I see SORT as an independent project. Like, it's not commercially focused. The purpose of the shows is not to make money. But I kind of view it as an equal playing field, that any exhibition happening anywhere, if it's has its own voice and is doing something good, then that's great. So we try to have our own voice and we do the best we can. And it's not the Kunsthistorische Museum, but I'd like one day to be there, I guess you could say.
Yeah, maybe it's maybe it's just like a smaller scale, which isn't necessarily meant in a way that it does the same. I guess it has a higher velocity or like speed, and maybe the context you make are entirely different compared to big institutions. But of course, as you said, like all this means, if it's like the Sezession webpage or the SORT webpage, it's all on the internet, so you can have a virtual presentation that's like more or less. So I don't see like content-wise the big difference. Maybe it's the means or the speed of communication that works differently.
I think the more spaces there are, or the more like exhibitions or like any kind of events that happen in the spaces in Vienna are just even like a positive thing of diversity. So it's so we go to each other's openings, or like I think there is not really like I don't think we are in a competition or like in a sense of opposition or something like that.
I think I would say there's a little bit of everything, like an alternative, of course, like we try to do things that maybe the big institutions can't do. It's more intimate or a lot of energy. Or I don't want to say there's no energy at the big institutions, but it's like within that smaller scale, it's just different and we have more freedom, I guess. But also a supplement, since I said we try to show things that we maybe wouldn't see. But I would actually be interested how you from the institution also would see us, but I don't know.
I think it's absolutely necessary that there is alternatives, that there is alternative thinking, because when you work in big institutions, of course, you are limited in your thinking, because there is a certain dynamics in exhibition making. I mean, we have to follow a certain pace, we have to fulfill certain expectations, and the let's call it freedom, of doing a program as you like it. Can also be a very kind of fruitful criticism of what we do, because sometimes we are too much. We even feel, I cannot speak for everybody, but just for me, sometimes we even feel a bit too comfortable in our rhythm, in our standards. I know how an institution can function, and then of course you don't see the necessity to productively challenge it all the time. So I think the more alternative spaces there are in a city, the better it is for the institutions, because you constantly have to, in a way, like look at like how they do things, and sometimes you're like, wow. And for instance, I find it extremely interesting that there is so many smaller spaces who think of artist in residency programs, and that's something that a big institution would love to do, but we don't have one. So, I mean, for me, it's really like an ongoing source of inspiration. Sometimes I miss this more aggressive anti thing. I feel like, you know, come on, fuck institutions, you get all the monies, you could be more like daring, you just like follow certain things.
I think it's a little tricky because I said it at the beginning, there's this term off spaces and then there's the term alternative spaces. And it's kind of like putting it all into the same pot, and it's like there's the institution which is the norm and everything else is just something alternative or something. And as you said, you know, there's a large variety and diversity of how each of the spaces that we're here today operate. And I just wish, talking about politics as well, I just wish that would be recognized a little more also by a political side, which is, of course, it's exhilarating and everyone loves that there are so many spaces and everyone is doing such a great program, but we're all doing it for free, basically. And the city contributes and like actually, how do you say? Sorry, I forgot the word now. It profits from it, and so do larger institutions as well, actually. So yeah, I hope that, I don't know how, but I hope that there can be some actually maybe collective working also on that very pragmatic political side.
I totally agree again, and I think I was asking you that question because I feel like of course we are the alternatives, the off, the supplement, but I think we also want to be taken serious and maybe mentioned by, I don't know, not just the total opposites.
Or maybe even enjoy like personal presence once in a while, you know. Or even enjoy the personal presence of certain people once in a while, which is very interesting. You talk to people
Sounds
that
nice.
finally give you the money, and it's like, yeah, but you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and then you didn't come to the space in like 4 years. You know? Okay.
Yeah, or I also remember we are showing artists, and then artists are showing at the big institutions like the Morph or Kunsthalle, and I feel like it could be mentioned that they showed at our space also, because I mean we need all the visibility that we can get. So it'd be nice.
I can hardly see the audience, but if anybody has a question, this would be like there is one in the back.
Thank you. I have a very simple question, but I wanted to ask it through the entire conversation. That's why I was a bit impatient. I think it's actually quite relevant to the audience, to the institution versus off space. Do you actually have opening times, and in which way? That's always quite open to definition.
We started to have opening hours now. It's very limited because we don't have much money, but you can find it on our website. It's Saturday afternoons during the exhibitions. And yeah, it's of course the performative screenings event on Friday evenings. So yeah, we can't do more than that. But also by appointment, of course. I think that's how we mostly do.
Yeah. Well, we're open Friday and Saturday from 3 to 6 and by appointment.
Sunday 12 to 3 or by appointment?
We don't have any opening hours.
Yeah, we just do the opening that is open, and the finissage that's also open, whatever event might take place during that time. But as it's also this shared studio, close to that, many people just like walk through and see the shows anyhow. I understand that it reaches a certain crowd, but we have the feeling that having something like an opening hour, if it's not like you're flat, it's hard to do, because you can't tell someone, sit there and wait till someone shows up and I give you nothing. You know, it's a bit unprofessional, maybe. And I think like one space that managed this opening hour problem very well was the Vesh, actually, because you could just always go there and see a show from people that maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, but it was like regular, and that was really working very well, I think.
I think we need a 10-minute break this time after more than 4 hours, so see you back at 7:20. Thank you.
Thank you.